let's start. Thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, hi, I'm Kilian. I'm the head of tech strategy for SwisRe, usually also based in New York, but happy to be here today.
Fantastic. So my first question, a nice, easy softball one to start with. How does SwisRe think about AI as it stands today and the speed at which things have been changing?
Yeah, so when we first started to think about AI, we sort of developed a framework to think about it in 3 waves. And amazingly, like 2 years later, it's still holding up. So that doesn't happen very often. So the first wave is really for us the adoption of the out-of-the-box Copilot capabilities. GitHub Copilot. Obviously Google has a suite, Microsoft, and so on.
Thank you.
And to really, to augment generic knowledge tasks. Now, the big challenge with that is they're easy to roll out, low barrier of entry, but it's really difficult to actually capture the value they generate. If you save like 2 hours per week in a certain type of employee, how do you capture, let alone realize that, right? And so easy to roll out, difficult to create value with. The second wave is then really leveraging large language models and other foundation models in our core processes to augment more insurance-specific knowledge tasks, underwriting, claims, and so on and so forth. That is a lot of what you talked about on the screen.
We're on the right
earlier.
track then.
Yes, exactly.
Good.
And particularly exciting in areas like underwriting, right? That have to digest these huge amounts of data very quickly, and where mistakes are actually extremely expensive, right? So augmenting the human decision making there. And then the third wave, we're thinking about how to leverage AI agents to fully automate some processes. Now, to be clear, the risks here are much higher, and we'll have to be very careful to balance that with the value we can actually generate. So here, I think we're still pretty early in the journey, more on a conceptual step right now than fully in a build or scale mode.
I'm going straight off track straight away based on what you said. No surprise to you. Where's the push coming from? Is it coming from the IT organization, from the exec, from your primary carriers? Where do you see the drive coming from?
So originally it really came from the executives. I think that was a much stronger push than actually from the business units themselves. But it was really important to create tangible value quickly, which I think in some lines we've achieved. And so then, the ball starts rolling and there's a tremendous amount of energy. So now, we have business stakeholders specifically asking about all the opportunities in underwriting and how they can integrate it into their own workflows, into their own workflow tools. And so that has really started to snowball.
Brilliant. I'm going to pick up on the word value. The ROI of Gen AI has been a massive issue for lots. We were talking outside about energy and the green credentials around all of this as well. If I leave that to one side for now, because that would be a whole debate in itself, how are you measuring value, or how are you presenting that back as a currency to either business or IT?
Yeah, so actually it sort of depends on what type of solution we're talking about. I think on a lot of sort of the workplace tools, it's really about measuring adoption, which is a really poor, proxy for impact.
Everyone's using it, but it's really bad
exactly.
still.
It's like sort of the best you can measure, not because it's good, but because you have nothing better. So I would say there we're nowhere, right? But when it comes to actually implementations that are specific to our type of tasks, then we actually start with the hypothesis generally. So saying, okay, so what are we trying to achieve in this underwriting process that would generate value? And then go scope the use case backwards from there. So there are very clear measurements that are, of course, use case specific. So this can be, although this is usually the least impactful one, we can accelerate this underwriting process by X%, right? This can mostly be impactful if that means we're likely to write more business. But again, this is not the biggest value driver for us. For us, it's really about, can we create a measurement about avoiding mistakes and being, exercising more technical excellence in underwriting, because, one underwriting mistake or one, major recovery opportunity on the claims identified is worth an awful lot more than a 20% productivity gains in the underwriting process, at least for us, right? That might differ for primary carriers.
I wish I could bring that message to a lot more people, because sometimes we just seem to be pushing more rubbish through the funnel faster, and actually more stuff in doesn't necessarily mean more quality out, right?
Yeah.
2 years you've said as well, which is quite a while. Where do you think we are right now? POC, implementation, large scale deployment? This is the next big debate that we're kind of seeing.
So I think we're everywhere at the same time to some degree, but obviously, I mean, needless to say, most of the use cases are in the POC stage, right? And you touched on that a little bit, that scale is really, really hard. But I do think that there are a fair amount of use cases, not just for us, but also for other carriers that I speak with that are in the implementation space. Especially sort of these kind of specialized co-pilots for call center agents, for example, right, to give faster responses to callers. Or we at SwisRe developed a solution to be able to query the life underwriting guidelines, and we made that available to clients that can query rates and so on and so forth. So these kind of quick win use cases, I think they are in implementation. But again, scale can be hard because to your ROI point. Scale can be expensive. If you build sort of a retrieval augmented generation framework and you try to scale it up, well, your costs are going to scale proportional to usage. It's not going to have marginal cost savings there. So this is where we then also need to rethink the way that we deploy and engage with other models, with smaller models, and so on, to change the cost structure so that the costs don't scale proportional to adoption.
You've just reminded me of two other things. So I spend most of my life in the P&C space. It's probably a split between 70-30. Are you seeing an equal balance between life and P&C from your observations of the market, or is one favoring more than the other?
It's a good question. I think the focus areas are different, and not necessarily that one is more mature than the other. I think in P&C, I see much more activities around claims than on life, for example. In life, there's probably more on the underwriting side, about equal in distribution. So the focus areas are different. I'm not sure they're in different stages of maturity.
Fair. Don't forget, folks, if there's questions you want to ask of Kilian or I, hopefully Kilian, by all means, throw hands up and we'll get the questions as well. What excites you most about all this then? So you and I can talk a long time about this, but what excites you and your business most about this right now then?
Yeah, sort of I have a short-term answer to that and a long-term answer to that. I think where I really felt the most tangible excitement in the room ever of any demo I've ever seen was when we created a quick prototype that on a claims processing for industrial fire claims. And so, yeah, I know, exciting, right? But we asked the model, are there any inconsistencies in that claim? Like really an extremely broad question. And it identified that in the video that was provided, there was, smoke going up straight in the air. But in the claims description, it said that, strong winds spread the fire rapidly. And it said like, that doesn't make sense to me. And that just blew people's mind. And I think that's the most tangible excitement I'd seen in a room. The more long-term for me, what is really exciting that this is an opportunity for us to, as an industry, to right some of the wrongs of the past. Like, we see insurance gaps emerging just because it's, underwriting in many lines has gotten so expensive that it doesn't make sense to focus on some types of consumers anymore. On the life industry side in the US, it's very apparent, where it used to be sort of a benefit shared by employers, and now that they don't do that anymore as much, the insurance gap in life insurance has grown because, for the industry, it's not really worthwhile targeting a middle market if underwriting is so expensive. So if you can get costs down there and increase automation in these areas, then we can solve a real problem. And I think that's the most exciting long-term opportunity for me.
I love that. The other thing you said there, which actually struck a huge chord, is when you show the demo. Now, a lot of the technology that we've all seen and stuff, and I've been in a pre-sales role 20 odd plus years ago where I rebuilt the demo in a car park, and we've all been through those things. But there is nothing more magical than seeing is believing, which is why I like to show videos and examples and so much more. To see that sort of stuff hands-on, how do you see that being different this time versus something, dare I say, like blockchain or elsewhere that was harder for people to grasp or understand?
Yeah, I think even if you compare it to machine learning or our custom machine learning models from the early 2010s, even if you compare that, I think just the barrier to entry is much lower here. We don't need to build models from scratch. We can prompt models and show very quickly tangible demos or tangible proof of values so that we can really accelerate development and also generate some excitement and create awareness about all the opportunities that we have around AI. So I think that lower barrier to entry, faster time to value has really completely transformed, I think, how we're thinking about our investments and our timelines in AI adoption.
And dare I say, are we being forgiven for our sins of the past, where I mentioned mainframe a minute ago, but even things like RPA, which I think was a phenomenal technology 10 years ago, and maybe people are still deploying RPA to fix broken processes. I still feel like something like Gen AI is going to take over what we've seen on RPA and bring in agentic and so much more.
Yes, but I think we have to be careful not to repeat the mistake, right? Like, so on the RPA side, in many cases, it would have been much easier to fix the process rather than building, some RPA application on top. Just because the team was around and could do it doesn't mean it was the best solution. And I think I see something similar or potential similar pitfall here around document processing, where it becomes much easier now to ingest an unstructured document that is submitted to a carrier, but is that the best way to transfer data in the first place? So again, I think the question has to be, what is the best way to fix that process? And in many cases, AI will be the answer, but much with RPA, in many cases it might not be.
Yeah, I mean, you're bringing back an issue now around data quality and data sharing across the industry, which forever has been an issue. I don't want to say I'm defeatist in any way, but I'm not sure in my lifetime we're ever going to solve that. I did have a debate with someone a while back to say maybe Gen AI removes the needs for standards in the industry going forward because it's the ultimate translation layer. What's your thought on that?
I think we'll see. I genuinely don't know, because I'm a bit with you there, right? That 10 years ago I said, like, okay, let's just agree on some kind of data standards, and then we're going to have an API, and the industry is going to automate itself. We're very much not there. So I think that pragmatically it's probably what's going to happen. Still not convinced it's the best solution.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I'm also struggling with how do we get to adoption? To your point, usage, and then secondly, everyone using it going forward. Because I'm firmly of the belief there's going to be two types of organizations in the future. Organization one, those that have fully adopted AI and actually bought in. They may not have got it everywhere just yet, but they've gone, we're all in, let's go after it. And dare I say, there's people sitting out there still today going, well, we know it's really important, but let's just hang back for a minute and see how others get on. We're not ready to go after it just yet. I mean, someone said to me just a few weeks back, the head of innovation was, we're deploying this SaaS platform over there, that's innovation enough. And I was kind of horrified. I've not heard something like that, but obviously they'll remain nameless, but I've not heard that for quite a while. I'll switch gears. We know what we're excited by. What scares the living daylights out of us as an insurance industry?
Yeah, I mean, most fundamentally, I'm scared of the potential that we roll out agentic solutions in a way that can be extremely harmful to also the insured. We do know that the underlying models that we're leveraging are quite fundamentally biased. And I know that a lot of the safeguards that we deployed in our traditional data science processes when we built purpose-built models don't fully apply to AI. So we need to find new ways on how to mitigate the risks of bias and proxy discrimination. And I know that's also a huge topic for regulators. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was in DC at the Treasury Department, right, with the federal and state insurance regulators, and there are, in sharp contrast to what we're seeing in Europe with more sort of the risk-based and principles-based regulation, what we're seeing in the US is insurance-specific AI regulation around output testing and outcome testing of models. And I think that is just something that we need to wrap our head around in the age of foundation models, because a lot of that regulation is written still with this preconception that we're going to build the model, right, and that we're going to have abilities to test the models that we don't necessarily have in a probabilistic model, right? So I think that kind of sphere of challenges is probably what I'm worried about most.
And who worries about it most inside the organization? Is it a technology worry? Is it our chief risk officer? Or is the push still coming from CEO down to say we have to go do this thing? We have to figure out, back to my point about a healthy disregard for the impossible, we'll figure it out. We've done the same with medical models and so much more.
Yeah, I think we're quite confident that we're going to figure it out, but we have to also be careful that it's not a race to the bottom, right? In terms of applying to applying to standards. And so I think it's a universal worry in the organization. I think obviously our legal and compliance colleagues are usually the forefront of that, but for once I'm fully with them, right? In the sense that we need to also engage with regulators, but also with other industry players to make sure that we agree on common principles here, and that we that this doesn't become a race to the bottom.
Yeah, and I think Google's firmly with you in that. We had 7 core principles of AI for a very long time. We stick by them, as you might imagine. I'm going to jump gears again. We've got a couple more minutes if anyone wants to ask a question. Everyone's still very... I'm going to jump straight to you. Go ahead. Do you want to shout out? I'm going to pass my microphone. Oh, there's a microphone. There we go. Perfect.
Hi. I have a question.
Who are you, sorry?
Huh?
Who are you? Name your name first.
Okay, my name is Luana.
Hi.
Hi.
It's all a friendly bunch here. It's all very informal. I said to Sylvia, there we go.
You guys will figure out. We will be here on stage soon. I would like to ask, how do you see data readiness? Because we're talking a lot about generative AI in the insurance sector. Specifically, I work, for example, with life insurance. And how is I see this is laughing. How is
Data's
data
perfect,
readiness
isn't it, Kilian?
around? Yeah.
Yeah, we have no data issues at SwisRe. No, I mean, data readiness has been a challenge for a long time. We've also been working at it for a long time. So dare I say it has become better. We've across the industry, I see data meshes emerging, right? And sort of, at SwisRe you call them analytical data models, but they go in the same direction. So it's improving. But partly that was because in at least some pockets of the organization, we were able to build applications quite quickly, right? Like, for example, if we have nicely curated underwriting guidelines readily available, then we can build a model on top very easily, right? So in these kind of use cases, it's been very powerful. In others, AI might actually help us to bridge that gap. We talked about document processing a lot, right? In the life insurance space, attending physician statements and all these really, really complicated documents that are even complicated for a human to review, right? We can make better sense of now. So that might actually enable us to capture more out of incoming submissions than we currently do, and integrate that into analytical data models that then help us to refine underwriting guidelines and the like, right? So that feedback loop might improve. On the other side, in reinsurance, the most complicated documents that we receive are bordereau files, right? So basically the summary of all the policies that fall under a reinsurance treaty. And these can be a complete mess. Like, the column definitions change, and the formats change, and we have nested files and so on, right? And so again, here, we're still at very early stages of this journey, but again, AI can be an important factor in making better sense of that data. But I would say that the carriers that were most mature in their data landscape were the first to launch AI applications into production, for sure.
Totally agree with that. And bordereau is another one of my favorite topics, but we won't go into it. Any other questions before? One more question here. Come on then, Matt. I'm going to throw something at you. You can shout. Just shout. Go for it.
Hello, I'm Matt. How do you keep across the latest and greatest innovation within AI? And then how do you bring that into the business to validate the opportunities?
It's a really difficult balance to strike, right? Because on the one hand, you're trying to build, like, to actually achieve scale, you're trying to put in architectural standards and, say, like, this is the approach now, we need to stick to it. And at the same time, obviously, there's very rapid developments in, underlying models and the tooling around the models. And I don't think I have a very good solution to balance this yet, to be honest, right? But it's really something that we continuously engage with the architectural team that manage the guidelines on this is how we execute on use cases, to bring in the new developments and have a very productive discussion on what do we need to take seriously and what can we wait out for now. But it is a balance that we need to strike, because also if we always jump on the next development too quickly, then we're not going to achieve scale in anything, right? Because we continuously change the underlying technology. So it's a difficult balance to strike. It's gotten a little easier over the last, let's say, 6 months or so, because simply this sheer pace of innovation in the model space has started to slow down a little bit. And sort of most of the models sort of start to converge sort of in a similar performance direction. But now we need to talk about small language models and how do we integrate that and how do we orchestrate them between large and small language models. So I think it's never over, but it's gotten a little easier.
Thanks, Matt. One last question from me, and then I'll hand the floor back to Sylvia and team. Fast forward 12, 24, 36 months, we're invited back, hopefully. What's the crystal ball say? What are we talking about in 12 or 24 months' time?
Probably how wrong we were about everything we said today.
And that data really is a mess.
But I think we're still going to talk about AI, which is sort of new, right? Because when we did these things in the past, we talked about blockchain, we talked about a lot of the quantum and whatever else was coming over the horizon, and next year we talk about something entirely different, and it was all forgotten. I think while some of the things or the assumptions that we made today on AI may not turn out to be true, we'll still be talking about AI, and I think that's already a huge change and gives the industry some focus on where to create impact.
I couldn't agree more. What I love, my kids, 15 and 12, are being taught how to use ChatGPT, in school, right? So actually, I don't actually worry about our next generation of workforce because they will come to the workforce with those tools in mind to go, I'm not even used to searching stuff, Dad. I'm just going to go straight onto Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever else that we can go do. So, Kilian, thank you so much for joining us on stage.
Thanks, Nigel.
Really appreciate it. Sylvia, the floor is yours.